Another day with players hitting the injured list, and another day with a loss for the Orioles. We'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, July 3rd, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' loss to the Texas Rangers in Arlington on Wednesday as they ended up dropping the rubber match and lose 2 out of 3 in this road series. Tell you what went right, what went wrong, and a shout out to a player from Wednesday's loss. Then we'll discuss the pair of roster moves that the Orioles made before Wednesday's game. Yennier Cano is back in the big leagues along with Corbin Martin for his first appearance with the Orioles, but it meant that another Oriole was DFA'd again, and another Orioles pitcher has ended up on the injured list. And then finally, the O's brought in a somewhat veteran major leaguer on a depth minor league move. We'll talk about the addition for depth of Jose Barrero at the end of the pod as well. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So we start today's episode with yet another Orioles loss. Now, as I am recording here just after 10 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday night, it is 6-0 Rangers with 1 out in the bottom of the 8th inning. So Texas is 3 outs away with a 6-run lead from closing this one out. I felt it was probably okay enough to start recording now, knowing that the Orioles are probably not going to score 6+ runs in the top of the 9th inning and are probably going to lose this game and most likely get shut out again, which would put them at 37-49 on the season. And they lose 2 out of 3 in this series to the Rangers for the second time in about a week. And both times they won game 1 and then, didn't go great after that. So let's start with what went right in Wednesday night's Orioles loss. And that is that Ryan O'Hearn had a double on what was his big day. Before the game, O'Hearn learned that he will officially be the starting designated hitter for the American League in the 2025 MLB All-Star Game. What a cool moment for O'Hearn. He made it to the final round of voting where they just take out the top 2. It was him and Yankees DH Ben Rice. Ben Rice, who got off to a hot start and has been really cooled down, even though O'Hearn did have kind of a tough June. Ben Rice been even worse lately, and O'Hearn smoked him in the final round of voting. On Wednesday evening, right before the game, it was announced, it was told to O'Hearn that he will be starting in the All-Star Game. And it is fully deserved for O'Hearn to be the All-Star starter in the American League at DH. Among AL DHs, he is first in WRC plus at 144. These numbers are entering play on Wednesday. First in WRC plus, first in batting average at 295, first in on-base percentage at 383, and first in OPS at 854. Now, when you check the leaderboards, there's sometimes going to be a guy ranked ahead of him in those categories. That is Rafael Devers. But of course, Devers was traded from the Red Sox to the Giants into the National League a few weeks ago. Ryan O'Hearn, after the trade, kind of joked around a little bit about it, was like thanking the Red Sox for trading Devers away because he was the one guy that legitimately stats-wise could have said, hey, I deserve this more than O'Hearn. Once he was traded, Ryan kind of became the slam dunk pick to be the starter at DH in the American League. And just what an awesome moment for him. He also had a double in this game in the 4th, his 11th double of the season. And just an incredible story for O'Hearn to go from, a waiver claim in the offseason from the Royals before the 2023 season. The Orioles then actually DFA'd him. He had to clear waivers and they outrighted him to AAA. He comes to camp. He doesn't even make the team out of spring training. He goes back and forth a couple of times before finally really sticking in May. And I think the biggest memorable O'Hearn moment is that big game-tying 3-run homer he had off of Jordan Romano in the 8th inning in Toronto in May. Really stepped onto the scene right there, and he's never looked back. And, he spoke about it to the media before Wednesday's game. When he speaks about it, you can tell just how much it means to him. Just coming to Baltimore and being able to turn his career completely around with the help of himself and some private hitting coaches, but also this Orioles staff to help him do it. And he's still getting better. That's the crazy part, right? We thought there was a chance that 2023 breakout season might just be, a flash in the pan. And then he got a little bit better at things last year. And then this year, he's taken it to a whole new level, and he is an all-star starter at this point. When he was going to be out of baseball 3 years ago, he's going to be starting the all-star game. Just an awesome, awesome moment for O'Hearn. Unfortunately, Jackson Holliday did not hear the same news. He was a finalist against Gleyber Torres of the Tigers at second base. Torres didn't win the voting, so we'll sit and wait to see if Holliday still makes the team. They'll probably carry 2 second basemen. It's going to be either Holliday or Brandon Lau of the Rays, who has been red hot. If I'm being honest, Lau is probably a little more deserving to get that nod, which would be his second All-Star game, and not just saying that because Lau, of course, is a Terp. But Holliday is 21. His day will come. It's still been a really good first half of the season for him. Now, what went wrong on Wednesday night? Well, that was Tomoyuki Sugano again. It is rough out there, folks, to watch him pitch. And this one, I mean, it's kind of getting worse and worse every time he goes out there. And we know, right? We knew after the Orioles signed him to a 1-year, $13 million deal at age 35 to come over from Japan this offseason. We knew what he is now. He is not the same pitcher he was 4 or 5 years ago with the electric stuff, right? It's more of a on the corners, throw strikes, get soft contact. And we knew in Major League Baseball, it's not always going to play the best. He might have some struggles, but he just came out of the gate and was incredible for the first 2 months, basically, of this season. You could make a strong argument that Sugano was the Orioles' best starter for a long time there. And it was like, wow, he seems to be overperforming, but he's just such a veteran pitcher and knows what to do out there that this is really, really impressive. Well, he has just swung completely in the opposite direction now in his last 5 starts because it just kept getting worse. 4 2/3 innings of 6-run ball for Sugano on Wednesday night. He allowed 10 hits. He did strike out 5 and walk only 1, but he allowed 2 homers on 79 pitches. The 10 hits was a season high allowed for Sugano. And it wasn't just that he was, giving up some dinks and dunks, which has certainly happened to him this season. Not just 10 hits, but 11 hard hit balls by the Rangers batters against Sugano. It was not fun to watch. Now, he had some struggles recently where he was, it was taking him 30 plus pitches to get through first innings. He was rough out of the gate. That was not the case Wednesday. He actually had 2 fairly quick and easy innings to start this game. He was through 2 scoreless. And then, he got to 2 on, 2 out in the third, had a chance to get out of the inning, and hung a breaking ball and served up a 3-run homer to Marcus Semien in the bottom of the third. Then he was almost out of a jam in the fourth with 2 on and 2 outs, allows a 2-run single to make it 5-0, just couldn't get that third out in those 2 innings, allows a further solo homer in the 5th to make it a 6-0 game, and that was the end of his day, not even able to finish 5 innings. Just continuing to be an issue here for Sugano. His last 5 starts, 22 1/3 innings, 40 hits, 22 earned runs, 17 strikeouts to 8 walks and 7 homers. That is an 8.87 ERA and a 2.15 whip in those last 5 starts for Sugano. He's completed 5 innings only once in those 5 starts as well. It has been really, really rough for him. Now, the good news is, even with the most pessimistic evaluations of Sugano coming over to MLB this offseason, I don't think anyone thought he would run out there and have an ERA close to 9 for the season. Don't think anyone thought he'd have a sub-3 ERA, which he was doing for a while. He's going to end up somewhere in the middle. If he keeps pitching, it's not going to be this bad for this long. He's been too good of a pitcher, albeit not in this league, but too good of a pitcher to have this continue where it's this awful, where he's basically unusable at this point with an almost 9 ERA in his last 5 starts. So you hope it just ends up somewhere in the middle, maybe a 4.5 type ERA pitcher for the rest of the season. But what we do know now is he's certainly not getting traded at this point. If the O's are sellers, Sugano's a rental. He's a guy they could have moved if somebody wanted him. Nobody's going to want this version of Tomoyuki Sugano. And it's the O's aren't really going to have a chance to trade him. They're going to hold on to him. They just need him to be better and eat some innings for the remainder of this 2025 season. Then at the end of the year, you evaluate and say, do we want to bring this guy back on another 1-year deal? Maybe he does turn it around in the second half and you do want him back. That doesn't seem like it's going to be the case at this point, sitting here on July 2nd, but it certainly is possible. It's been rough. He did have the good splitter working. He got 6 whiffs on that strikeout pitch. That looked good, but pretty much everything else otherwise, it just wasn't there. Just too much bad stuff sitting in the middle of the zone, and the Rangers were just all over it on Wednesday night. And Yeah, I mean, the O's rotation is in a tough spot because, Zach Eflin was pitching poorly. Now he's on the IL. Cade Povich has a setback. Obviously, you are still without the likes of Wells and Bradish. And you're just looking around and you're like, the way Sugano's pitching, he's an automatic loss. Like, he really doesn't deserve to be in the rotation. But also you look around and you're like, the next rotation option to call up from AAA is Chase McDermott. And Chase McDermott just can't throw strikes right now in Norfolk. So you really don't want to go to him. I mean, you already have Brandon Young in the rotation who's having his own struggles and maybe, questions about does he deserve to keep that spot. And beyond McDermott, it's like, do you want to go to Cameron Weston or something right now? You're kind of at the point where it's just like Sugano's got to stay in there and figure it out. And he will. Again, it's not going to be this bad, but it is this bad right now. And it is really, really tough to watch at this moment. And the shout out for Wednesday night's game, the shout out goes to Corbin Martin, who was called up to join the Oriole bullpen on Wednesday and made his O's debut relieving Sugano in the fifth inning of this one. And I thought he looked pretty good in his first outing as an Oriole, his first outing in the big league since 2022. He goes an inning and a third scoreless, 1 hit, 2 strikeouts, no walks, and just 1 hard hit ball for Martin on 24 pitches. This is a guy who was throwing like a 95 mile an hour fastball and a 91 mile per hour cutter in AAA this year. His four-seamer was up at 97. His cutter was at 93. That adrenaline pumping for your first outing in the bigs in 3 years was upping his velocity by 2 ticks really across the board. But he didn't sacrifice command with that adrenaline. He was throwing strikes. He looked good. He struck out Corey Seager with a nasty pitch. Like, I liked what we saw from Corbin Martin, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Corbin Martin coming up next, because I wanted to talk about specifically the flurry of roster moves the Orioles made on Wednesday. Another pitcher heading to the injured list. They made some changes to their bullpen. We'll talk about what they were and why they made the moves coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Are you tired of just endless scrolling, trying to find that best deal? Well, Game Time's Zone Deals picks the best seats in your section for you. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. For me, that's the best part. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That is LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So for the Orioles after that loss, or I should say before the loss, which has just gone final as they lose 6-0 to the Rangers on Wednesday night to lose 2 out of 3 in the series and drop to 37-49 on the season. Before that loss, the Orioles made a couple of roster moves to shake things up in their bullpen, and we're going to run through those right now. Let's start with the first one. Matt Bowman, for the third time this season, was designated for assignment by the Orioles. Now, he was recalled on Sunday for the Orioles to get a fresh arm into their bullpen, and he threw 50 pitches in somewhat long relief. Didn't record a lot of outs, but somewhat long relief in the loss on Tuesday. Didn't look good in that outing, gave up 4 runs, and maybe the Orioles just thought, hey, we're going to need another fresh arm after 50 pitches from Bowman. He's not going to be available for a while, and he wasn't very good. So they DFA him for the third time this year, and most likely what happened the first 2 times will happen again. Bowman will clear waivers, and he will elect to stay with the organization in AAA, because if he doesn't, he forfeits the $1-point-something million that the Orioles guaranteed him in a contract this year. If he elects free agency, he'd have to lose that money and get a new deal, and he knows the Orioles, as they've done 3 times, they will call him back up again at some point this season. So unless someone claims him, which is possible, not likely, he will probably stick in the Orb. So to take his spot, the Orioles selected the contract of right-handed pitcher Corbin Martin from AAA Norfolk. Now, Martin, who the Astros selected in the second round of the 2017 draft out of Texas A&M. That was back when Mike Elias was running the Astros draft, so he knows Martin well. He is now a 29-year-old right-handed reliever who in his big league career has 17 big league appearances, 10 starts, 57 and 2/3 innings in the big leagues. It was in 2019 with Houston, the team that drafted him, and then 2021 and 2022 with the Diamondbacks. Overall, it's a 6.71 big league ERA entering Wednesday. And in between those two teams, he did have Tommy John surgery back in 2020. Also had some other injuries, missed all of the 2023 season after getting shoulder surgery. He was pitching in the minor leagues last year, was put on waivers, and the Orioles claimed him off waivers in May of 2024 and sent him down to AAA Norfolk. And with the Tides last year, obviously Elias knew him well, liked the stuff, but the results didn't really come. 33 1/3 innings for the Tides out of the bullpen last season, had a 4.05 ERA, pretty high walk rate, pretty low strikeout rate. He returned to the Orioles this year, was not on the 40-man roster, but came back with the O's. And again, it hasn't been super pretty. 32 1/3 innings in AAA this year. He's got a 5.29 ERA with a 4.92 FIP. Strikeout rate is higher, still 23% about average. Walk rate is lower at 10%, still above average, so it hasn't been great. But he has been red hot recently, has Corbin Martin in AAA in his last 8 outings out of the Tides bullpen. Martin, 7 scoreless innings, 2 hits, 6 Ks, and 3 walks. Now, in terms of what the pitch mix is, we saw a good chunk of it. He threw 24 pitches in an inning and a third scoreless on Wednesday night in his first big league outing in 3 years. But what it's been most of the year in AAA, you can see here if you're watching on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This is from StatCast and Baseball Savant, Martin's pitch mix from AAA Norfolk so far in the 2025 season. It's a 4-seam fastball. He throws almost half the time, sits around 95, although he ran it up to 97 on Wednesday. Doesn't get a lot of hard contact against that pitch. Then it's what StatCast has been calling a slider. Really, it's a cutter. It's a very hard slider. Sits at around 91. It gets a little bit of swing and miss on that pitch. Guys have slugged it pretty well, though, this season. It's kind of struggled. Then there's an interesting curveball that, funny enough, he didn't, I believe, throw that curveball at all in his 24 pitches on Wednesday night. But the curveball at times has been his best pitch in AAA. Opponents hitting just 216 against it. It's got a 43% swing and miss rate. And then he's thrown a changeup in there from time to time against lefties, which has a good whiff rate, but he doesn't just really use it all that much. And, we didn't really see the changeup or the curveball basically at all in that big league outing on Wednesday. But, as I said, I like what the stuff looked like. And, it'd be interesting to see if he does stick around in this bullpen. Now, there's a couple guys in the Corbin Martin mold that, came over either on waivers or were minor league signings this offseason who I like a little better than Martin, who can provide, length 2 innings at a time in AAA. Like Levi Stout is a guy I like a little bit better who's in Norfolk right now. But this is an arm that's probably going to get DFA'd again at some point right in the next couple of weeks. Maybe they're a little more willing to lose a guy like Martin rather than someone like Stout who has much better stuff. But good beginning to his Orioles career for Martin on Wednesday night. There was another move, though, and that was another pitcher is on the injured list. Keegan Akin becomes the 24th Oriole to end up on the injured list at some point this year, and the 14th current Oriole to be on the IL. He was placed on the 15-day injured list on Wednesday, retroactive to Tuesday, July 1st, with what the Orioles are calling left shoulder inflammation. Now, after his last outing when he gave up the 3-run homer to Garcia and blew the save in the 10th on Monday night, the Orioles didn't really say anything about an injury for Akin. He didn't pitch Tuesday and then goes on the IL on Wednesday. Now, what we do know is his stuff on his fastball has been down. The strikeouts have gone down. The walks have gone up. He has not been the same pitcher he was this year after his great 2024 season. Still been a solid middle relief option. He's been the second lefty in the bullpen. The Orioles now have just one left-hander. It's Gregory Soto in their active bullpen at the moment. But even though his ERA, 3.32, is exactly the same as it was last year, his FIP is over a run and a half higher than this year than it is last year. Basically means under the hood, things are going a little bit worse for Akin than they were last season. And maybe it is injury, or maybe it's just him needing some rest, a little dead arm, whatever it is. Give him a couple of weeks off and then return Akin to the bullpen. But because Akin was placed on the IL, the Orioles needed another reliever up here, and Yennier Cano is back. Now, remember, he was optioned to AAA on June 22nd when he had that really bad outing against Tampa when he gave up 4 runs and when the Orioles were blowing that 8-0 lead. And then he had pitched on back-to-back days. He wasn't going to be available for a little bit. The Orioles, this was last weekend, desperately needed a fresh arm or maybe even 2 in their bullpen because they had just pitched so much in that Rays and Yankee series. And the Orioles decided, because Cano has options, to send him to AAA. Now, he hadn't been pitching super well recently, so that was part of it. But usually he'd have to wait 15 days to come back. That would have been like next week. He would have been eligible, but because he's replacing an injured player in Akin going on the IL, he is eligible to return whenever, and he will replace Akin. Now, he made 2 outings in AAA after being sent down Thursday and Saturday. 2 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 2 Ks, and no walks. Did have a little more velo on his fastball, a little more break on his slider, a little bit different movement on his changeup. So not sure if he made adjustments down there or not. But the Orioles are probably going to ease him back into a high leverage role. As we saw on Wednesday, he comes up and immediately pitches in a 6-0 game in the bottom of the 7th. But what was good to see, a scoreless outing for Cano. He did walk a batter, but only 16 pitches to put up a 0. So that was a nice return to the big leagues for Yennier, and hopefully he does stick in this Oriole bullpen for the remainder of the season. Good to see him back after a little reset in AAA Norfolk. But speaking of AAA Norfolk, the Orioles added another player on a minor league deal on Wednesday, someone who I actually wouldn't be super surprised if he appeared for the Orioles at some point this year. Tell you a little bit more about Jose Barrero to finish off the show, coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for the extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. So to finish things out on today's Thursday episode, the Orioles made a minor league signing on Wednesday, and it was infielder Jose Barrero, who, as Francis Romero reported, the Orioles signed him to a minor league deal, and he reported to Norfolk on Wednesday. Now, Norfolk's game was once again rained out on Wednesday, so we may see him make his Tides debut on Thursday. Now, who is Jose Barrero? Well, he was a free agent because he was DFA'd by the Cardinals back on June 24th. He cleared waivers and then chose to elect free agency on June 27th. Now, reportedly, according to MLB trade rumors, he had interest from an NPB team over in Japan, but was still wanting to kind of feel out his options in the U.S. And apparently a minor league deal with the Orioles was better than a guaranteed deal with a team in Japan. So he wanted to stay here, and he signs on with the O's on a minor league deal. Now, he is a 27-year-old right-handed hitting Cuban utility man who was with the Cardinals in AAA and the big leagues this year. In the majors with the Cardinals this season, Barrero appeared in 22 games, mostly as like a defensive replacement or a pinch runner or things like that. That's what happens when you have 22 games, but only 31 plate appearances. Didn't go well at the plate. 4 for 29, did have 1 home run, 9 strikeouts, just 1 walk for the right-handed hitter, but he was crushing it in AAA early this season, which is why he got the call up to the big leagues. He was hitting .299 with a 142 WRC plus and 101 plate appearances in AAA Memphis. This season, he had signed a minor league deal with St. Louis back in December, joined the team, started the year in AAA, and then was called up on April 28th and was there until he was DFA'd about 2 months later. But he, at this point, he came up as a shortstop, but he is really a super utility guy at this point. He played at least 1 inning at these following positions in the big leagues for the Cardinals this year. Second base, shortstop, third base, center field, right field. That is the definition of a super utility guy, and that gives him a lot of versatility, and he's only 27 years old at this point. He used to be a fairly well-known prospect. He actually signed for $5 million with the Reds out of Cuba as an international free agent back in 2017. Debuted with the Reds at MLB at age 22 in 2020. Kind of a weird situation. Barrero finished the 2019 minor league season in high A. In 2020, he went to, remember, the alternate site back in COVID times and performed so well in the alternate site, even though he never even played a game in Double A, that the Reds they were a playoff team in 2020, I believe. The Reds just put him on the MLB roster and said, hey, you're good. We need an infielder. Let's do it. Now, he didn't hit at all, and it was probably way too early for him to be in the bigs. And he appeared in the big leagues with the Reds every season from 2020 to 2023, but was never a full-time player, never an everyday guy. In 161 big league games, he's had 478 plate appearances. He has a 32 career WRC plus at the big league level. That is abysmal as a hitter, basically one season's worth of playing so far. Now, he spent all of last year in AAA with the Rangers and really struggled, but had kind of the bounce back year in AAA with the Cardinals this year. There's still something in his bat. He's not like super elite at any of his defensive positions, but the value is in the versatility. The ability to not look like a fool at all of those different positions he can play can be really, really helpful. And metrically, like, he has really good bat speed. That's nice. He has a really keen ability to pull the ball in the air, and you do your most damage as a hitter when you pull the ball in the air. He does that a lot. So that tells you, at age 27, there is still something to be unlocked in that bat that just hasn't really happened for him so far at the big league level. And the data has looked pretty good. Career high 40% hard hit rate, 112 mile per hour max EV in AAA this year. That is all good. So the question is, he's going to begin in AAA on a minor league deal. How does he fit in with the Orioles? Well, he gives you another utility infield option in AAA for depth, but the Orioles do have a lot of those guys. Terran Vavra, Livan Soto, Vimael Machine, Jeremiah Jackson, who we'll get to. But the Orioles may see Jose Barrero as actually more of an option for the big leagues this year. We know Jorge Mateo is going to be out for a while, just had his rehab shut down because he injured his hamstring. He's going to be out 8 to 12 weeks. That could take him out till September or beyond. And right now, Luis Vazquez is on the major league roster. As good as he's been as a pitcher, he has just one hit as a hitter. He's kind of playing that bench utility infielder role for the Orioles right now. There's a chance they see Barrero as an upgrade over Luis Vazquez for this major league roster. At some point, they could make that switch. That's why you make a move like this to bring in Barrero, because they see something with him at 27. He's available. Might as well bring him in for depth. And speaking of that depth at the AAA level among the utility infielders, I did just want to shout out one more player that I just mentioned. That is Jeremiah Jackson. Jackson, who the Orioles signed to a minor league deal this offseason, former second-round pick by the Angels out of high school back in 2018. Now 25 years old, plays all three infield positions, third base, shortstop, second base. Got to Double-A with the Angels in 2023, then was traded to the Mets for Dominic Leone at the deadline that year. Released by the Mets after the 2024 minor league season, never getting to the big leagues. And the Orioles signed him to a minor league deal. He was in Double-A Chesapeake this year. He had a 94 WRC plus in 45 games. He was kind of whatever, but the Orioles needed an infielder in AAA, so they called him up to Norfolk on June 3rd, and he has been scorching hot for the last month in AAA, entering play on Thursday. Jeremiah Jackson for the Norfolk Tides, in exactly 100 plate appearances, is hitting .354 with a .380 on base and a .688 slugging percentage. He's got 8 home runs. He's only walking 3% of the time, but he's also only striking out 10% of the time, which is pretty elite contact skills. And he's got a 180 WRC plus to go with a really good 45% hard hit rate, 111 mile per hour max exit velocity. He's looking like that second round pick type of player that he was coming out of high school. And his 180 WRC plus is third among all AAA hitters this year who have had at least 100 plate appearances at that level. So we're just talking about Jose Barrero, maybe a better version of Luis Vazquez. And I like Vazquez for this big league team. How about Jeremiah Jackson maybe being a better version for this team? The Orioles going out and getting, a 25-year-old on a minor league deal who was kind of underutilized in an Angels organization that's not very great with player development. He's only 25. Maybe they can unlock something here with Jackson, and he can be a big leaguer for this Orioles team. I wouldn't rule it out, him debuting for the O's at some point this year. It's been awesome to see him do that in AAA, and just, hey, felt like giving the guy a shout out here because He's been just absolutely lighting the world on fire for the last month in Norfolk. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Orioles are off today, so no game in this one. And they go to Atlanta this weekend. We're not really going to get a full series preview. What we do know is that it will be Charlie Morton Friday, as long as his elbow's okay, Dean Kramer Saturday, and Trevor Rogers on Sunday. They have not named the Braves their starters for that series just yet, but the Sunday game is again at 11:35 a.m. Eastern time on Roku. The Braves, similar to the Orioles, had a terrible start to the season. They're also kind of figuring it out a little bit better, but it's probably too little too late. They currently sit at 39-46 on the year and are even further back than the O's are in the NL playoff picture. But I'm doing the mini preview now, not on the Friday episode, because we got something else to get to on the Friday pod. It's going to be a fun one coming up tomorrow to finish off the week. Paul Mancano from the Banner Baseball Show and over at the Baltimore Banner, previously of Masson, been on this podcast seemingly a million times. We're going to do kind of our first long look at the trade deadline on tomorrow's episode. We're going to do a game that I am calling Send Him or Extend Him. We're going to look at all of the Orioles rental players, the Ryan O'Hearns, the Cedric Mullins, the Zach Eflins, the Charlie Mortons of the world, and decide to send him away via trade, or extend him, keep that player around beyond potentially this year. Going to be a fun episode coming up tomorrow with Paul, so make sure to come back and check that one out. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.